there are a few different kinds of members we can use. There are two examples of different kinds of members that we are looking at right now. These members are called fields, and what they do is they contain data. This member is called a method, which should sound familiar because we were creating methods on our program class last week and the week before. So we have an example of a class that has two kinds of members, fields and methods. Fields follow this format. To define a field, we start off with our modifiers. In this case, I've given it the public modifier. We'll talk about that in a moment. So we give it a modifier, we give it a type, and we give it a name. And we terminate with a semi. So this looks a lot like a variable definition other than the fact that we have the public modifier. So that should look fairly familiar to people who have been working with variables for a while, which I hope should be pretty much all of you, at least as far as back in week 1 when we talked about them. And it behaves very similarly to a variable. The biggest thing to remember, though, about fields is that they are variables, but they only come into play when you instantiate a class. Which means that although technically, so this is kind of maybe a difficult concept for some people, but what we have right now is we have a variable name up here. But we actually have 3 instantiations of that variable. One used here on line 35, one on 41, and one on 53. These are, although they're technically the same field, they are not the same data. They're not the same data because its containing object is a different instantiation. So this is a field. Field starts with our modifiers, our data type, and our name. This is a method. A method starts off with our modifiers, our return type, our name, and our parameter list. The only difference between this method and the methods we've used before in this class is that this method does not have the static modifier. I'll talk about what static is very shortly. Again, when I say this method is not any different than the methods we've already been writing, that's true because look, it looks like a normal method except for one distinction. Oops, I forgot to use the this dot here.